We're tracking major news in the New York criminal probe into the Trump organization, and we now have two experts with me, lawyers who know a lot about this stuff. Manhattan DA candidate Tali Farhadian Weinstein. We should note, for full disclosure, she did run against Mr. Bragg in the primaries and also knows a lot about this office and these issues. We're also joined by Adam Kaufmann, who's the former executive assistant DA and chief of the investigative division of the Manhattan DA's office. Welcome to both of you. I think viewers know this was a big case. It was one of the main criminal probes that touched Donald Trump himself, potentially. His whole company still under indictment. Tali, your reaction to this news?
Well, Ari, I'm focused on what Pomerantz and Dunn were trying to tell us with these coordinated silent resignations, because, as you know, prosecutors can't grab the mic and say very much. So small moves can mean a lot. And I think their resignations are full of meaning. I think they're trying to tell us two things. One is, as you said, they've had a big disagreement with the district attorney. As you know, they stayed on to work this case. January 1st, they decided to be a part of his administration. Something happened between them and him in the last 6 weeks, and it seems as that he has abandoned the case, and they who are living and breathing it think that he has made a wrong decision. That's my best read. I think the other thing that they're trying to tell us, and this is really important, is that it can't just go out with a whimper, and that he is going to need to make some kind of public statement of declination, if that is in fact what he has done, or some other sort of explanation to sort of demystify what seems in some ways quite mysterious.
Really interesting. Appreciate your view. As mentioned, you know a lot about this. And Adam, so do you. So I ask you your take on both what is in the New York Times piece, which is a big story by any account, and specifically the point Tali makes, that it would appear that these prosecutors were going towards something. They stayed through the beginning of this term. Now they're bolting. Does that mean that Mr. Bragg ultimately perhaps overruled the desire to indict Donald Trump himself? Your read.
I'm astounded. My phone's been blowing up. My email's going crazy. A lot of former colleagues. We're all sort of speculating, Ari, and you really outlined it quite well in the run-up. We don't quite know what happened, but I do agree. I mean, prosecutors don't resign simultaneously like this unless there was a major disagreement between them and the DA. Otherwise, they probably would have stayed on and seen this through to the end. There's a great team, I think, that has the existent case, the Weisselberg case, and the Trump organization for the indictment that's already been filed. But for Mark and Kerry to resign simultaneously, it's a huge message. And to me, it speaks to a significant disagreement between the two of them and the new district attorney.
Build on that. The disagreement would be that they felt they had worked up to another move, a move of indicting Donald Trump for something. I mean, again, this is not well, just to finish the thought, then I'll let you go. This is not some giant complex company that has rotating CEOs and boards and multinational, multi-country. No, Donald Trump's organization was indicted for its practices. It is a very small family company with him at the top. So it doesn't seem like a legal stretch that they would have gone on beyond indicting the corporate fiction to the person himself. Go ahead.
So strange. I mean, there could be a few things. What's one thing that's strange to me is that from what we know, there were more witnesses who they wanted to put before the grand jury and gather more information. And that seems to have been put on hold. That to me is very strange, because why wouldn't you go ahead, put the witnesses in, see what they have to say, and get a little more evidence before making whatever decision was made? Prosecutors would probably not do this, resign this way, unless there was a disagreement. Now, we don't know. It could go either way, right? It could be that the lead prosecutors thought that they should move on with the case. Mr. Bragg disagreed and they resigned, or they thought there was no case and Mr. Bragg wanted them to go on, and so they resigned. I would speculate as to the former rather than the latter, but it does definitely look like there was a significant disagreement that caused these two very experienced, very capable, very skilled attorneys to walk away from a huge investigation, which there is a message there.
Tali?
I agree. And, I think a particularly curious thing in the reporting today was that Mr. Bragg instructed them in the middle of January to slow down, which, I have to agree is just really strange. Maybe the disagreement should have come to a head as the grand jury was set to expire and they had to make a final decision about pursuing an indictment. But that is very hard to understand and to explain why you would do that rather than to maximize your time in front of this grand jury to get as much evidence as possible. And so I think putting that together with the fact that they were deeply read into this case. Remember, Mr. Dunn was the person who argued the tax returns in front of the Supreme Court. I mean, this has been what he's been doing day in and day out now for years. To suddenly be told to kind of waste your time that you have left on the clock that is ticking must have been very hard for them to hear, is my guess.
Yeah, and Adam, I want to build on the point we raised in the setup, which is not to prejudge any potential case. We cover it as it comes. But there certainly was a drumbeat where they feel they had enough to move on the CFO and the whole company, as mentioned. The accounting firm walks away under pressure after years of riding with Trump. People are familiar with the term ride or die. Well, they weren't ride or die. The heat got to the point that they said, you know what, we can't stand by this. Apparently this stuff is false. That in the so-called Humpty Dumpty case hurt Trump as well. And so there was the sign that the pressure was working. Does that mean that you have a bulletproof case against someone who ducks email and responsibility and paper trails? No, it doesn't, but it certainly seemed to be going that way. Can you think of any valid reason why Mr. Bragg may have looked at this and said, in all fairness, there just wasn't any case on Trump?
I mean, sure. That's, as you said in the run-up, reasonable lawyers can look at any set of facts and come to different conclusions. What I keep coming back to is that these two very experienced attorneys, experienced prosecutors, both have been on both sides they both have huge track records as former white-collar defense attorneys. They're leaders of the defense bar. They came on to the DA's office. They ran this investigation. As Tali said, this went up to the Supreme Court for Kerry to argue that motion.
Big win.
And so,
big win.
Yeah, I mean, if it were a typical disagreement or the case is puttering out, then I would expect them to stay on, let the grand jury expire, and there's no action. That would sort of send one signal that we just didn't have enough evidence here to go forward. But this simultaneous resignation, 6 weeks into Mr. Bragg's tenure as DA, it just sends a message that they had a belief about the case that he would not sign on to. That's the only reasonable explanation to me.
And Tali, this job is very high profile in New York. It's not something that nationally everyone may keep track of, but Mr. Bragg has been immediately under vice pressure from police unions, the police leadership, doing a dance with the mayor, pressure from Albany. He is a rookie. I emphasize, only out of fairness to our viewers, the disclosure that you ran against him. That doesn't make you unique. We have guests all the time who have experiences and know people in public life. But with that disclosure made, do you think that at some level this was too much pressure for him to handle and that he sounds different than he did when he ran?
Well, I can't speak to what he's thinking about, Ari, but you are right to say that this office is a local office, but one with national scope. And I think that it's just not possible for this to be treated like any other case and for us not to hear from him as to what he is thinking about his ultimate decision in this case. Obviously, prosecutors can't make a public statement every time they decide not to bring charges. That's just not going to fly here. History is watching him, and this is bigger than whether he has had a rough start, whether his policies so far have been received favorably or unfavorably by people in Manhattan. This is really about making sure that there's not just accountability, but really confidence in institutions like this one, that good choices are being made and that the right thing is being done.
Understood, and really appreciate the expertise. Both of you mentioned the scope of this, the surprise in reading the story, the legal community talking. So sharing some of your expertise with our viewers who may also wonder what is going on, I think, is useful on certainly a busy news night. So Tali and Adam, my thanks to both of you.